What do you mean it's not your fault?
It's time for us to go live, Tom.
Oh, hey.
It is. And we are, this is Eric and this is Tom, coming to you live from the Old Town Coffee Shop, drinking Mexican coffee today. And waiting for Facebook to build us a little audience.
So while we're waiting,
yes, sir.
I'll share what I shared when I walked in the door.
Okay.
Great minds think alike.
That's true.
And we have proof this morning.
Yes.
Because we both showed up. I'm going to pick yours up. We both showed up with the same book this morning.
To talk about on the show without talking to each other.
Yeah.
Now, the thing, but
and that happens a lot.
That leaves us with a dilemma, though. If it's great minds, one of us has to have a greater mind than the other. We're just going to leave. We'll leave that alone.
That one there.
Yes, we'll just leave that laying there, and we won't do anything with it. Let's see, who do we have? We got Jeremy. Who else do we have? I've seen some other faces come across. Dave. Dave always catches us early. It's early for him. There's Jack. Good morning, Jack. Good to have you. So you're about to ready to start football season, I think. So.
Is that Jack Welch that used to run GE?
No, that's Jack Welch. That is the awesome, incredible Texas high school football coach.
Oh, Texas.
One of the greatest high school football coaches of all time. Good morning, John.
I won't go there.
I will.
Okay. Hey, John.
Repeatedly. All right, who else do we have this morning? We always have a nice little crowd that starts to gather together as Facebook starts to send this out and do this. Well, Tom and I have both been talking about different topics this week that kind of always align with each other, interestingly enough. Because
and we don't plan that.
We don't necessarily. We don't plan it at all. What have you been talking about this week, Tom?
Oh, now you're going to test me.
See,
on
we'll
it,
put
right?
you on the spot.
Opportunity, risk, and opportunity.
Hey, Paul. Hey, Seth. Yes, we've been talking about risk and opportunity. You've been talking about risk and opportunity, and I've been talking about all week long about what happens when life happens, and that those kinds of things get inside of your head. The risk gets inside of your head. The concern about the risk, and am I going to be able? What am I going to do if this happens? And so that's where I came up with the phrase, what happens when life happens, because life does happen. Yeah. Weird things take place. You can end up with an illness. You can end up in the hospital. You can end up having all kinds of things happen to you while you're in the process of fulfilling your dreams, your visions, your goals, your purposes, all the things that you believe that you were gifted, talented, and placed to do. And because that gifted, talented, and placed are really important to both of us, and we use that phrase a lot. I actually got it from Tom. That does not give him the first vote in the Great Minds.
I don't know. I think it does.
All right. We'll let you have that.
We'll take a survey in the cafe to find out.
Nah,
see, Joe. I'm the winner.
We'll be in trouble.
So along those lines, yesterday I was talking about, I used a quote from Babe Ruth that said, don't let the fear of striking out keep you from swinging at the ball.
And that's so important, because we have a tendency to say, well, what happens if? Well, what if this happens? What if that happens?
Right. And so talking about opportunity and risk, I think it was yesterday, it might have been Monday, I was talking about what's the worst possible outcome, what's the best possible outcome, and then what's most likely.
Yeah.
Because what we tend to do, for those of us that let risk and worry and anxiety, which is worrying about worry, prevent us from doing something, we go immediately to the worst possible scenario. What's the worst case scenario? And then we live there. And we never get out of dwelling on the worst case scenario.
And you know what that is?
What?
Smart people problems. It is. We overthink things.
Yeah.
It's a tendency to overthink stuff. And I always refer to that as smart people problems. We know more than we should know. And it's so we worry more, and so it puts us in these awkward positions and these awkward feelings. And I already know that this is going to be a problem because I know everything, and when you come from a family of know-it-alls, and you have a background of know-it-alls, and you get yourself in trouble because you overthink stuff, and overthinking things get a problem because you got a problem with what's going on inside of your head.
So what's your quote out of the book that you want to share?
The quote out of the book is rather long. Do you want to go ahead and read that, Tom?
I will.
While I watch But it's rather long, so stick with us as we go through this.
So first of all, proper attributions, Motivation Manifesto by Brendan Burchard.
Excellent book, by
Excellent
the way.
book. And he says, so our attitude each morning must be that this is our day, no matter what. If we can start with that intention, and if we can start with that intention, if we develop clarity and write our own manifestos and plans, and we execute them with heart and discipline, if we stick to the fight and stay in charge, we suddenly find ourselves back at the helm, happy, motivated, and alive.
There's a little tiny phrase that jumps out at me in the middle of that paragraph, and that's the reason why I love that quote. It says, "Develop clarity."
Right.
Now, that's different than overthinking something, because if you develop clarity, what you've done is exactly what you talk about, and that is what's the worst thing that can happen, what's the best thing that can happen, what's the most likely thing to happen.
Right.
That most likely thing to happen is where you develop clarity at. That's the clarity. That's the reason why I grabbed that quote, is because it has that phrase, clarity.
Well, right. Hey, Collier. Good to see you, buddy.
Collier's going to come and visit us, I think.
Hey, he has to come see him, or we're going to come see you.
Yeah,
So
come and get you.
the worst case scenario is when I'm pulling out of the parking lot here, I get hit by a bus.
Right,
That's the worst case scenario. And if I live and dwell in that, I'll never leave the parking lot.
right.
So the best case scenario is there is no traffic, all the lights are green, and I make it to my destination in record time.
Right.
Well, that's probably not going to happen, and the bus is probably not going to hit me either. So what's the middle ground there? And that's the clarity you're talking about. The thing that I like to pull out of this is write your own manifesto.
Right.
As I like to say, we all get to write our own story of success. Right? If we subscribe, if we submit to someone else's definition of what success is, then we are turning over the opportunity to be successful in our lives to someone else. And I'm not willing to do that.
Paul's making a great point here,
Okay.
and I really like this. He said that the closer that we get to the finish line, the harder it gets. Yeah, it does get harder.
It's because you're running uphill.
It's because you get closer to there's somebody's got to push the ball across the line, and how many more metaphors can we stick in?
Well,
but
and
the point is that it does get more difficult as you get closer to the end, and that's when that manifesto. I'm not going to let this get in my way. I'm going to write my own definition. I'm going to write my this. We're going to get there. This is how we're going to do this.
So here's how that plays out, though, right? There's a sense of an element of herd mentality that applies here also. If you've ever seen on, National Geographic or Mutual Omaha's Wild Kingdom, right?
You're
there I go.
old.
I'm dating myself.
Wow.
How about that? So you have the herd of gazelles, and the lion is approaching from the side. So this whole herd of animals begins running, but only 2 or 3 of them know why.
Right.
Right? The rest of them are running because everybody else is running.
You ever watch 4-year-olds play soccer?
Yeah, same way,
Same thing.
same thing. And you can throw a cat out there and completely derail everything. So, as you get closer to the finish line, right, the rest of the herd is going to try and hold you back. Mainly because if you succeed, then that's existence proof that they could also.
Right.
And they don't want to incur the risk of stepping out of their comfort zone to do something different.
Exactly.
All right, something else scrolled by there.
Yeah,
I know
we got
you were
some,
watching that.
lots of really good comments that are going on. So, Tom, try to catch us up here with the comments, because y'all have made this really interesting as we talk about this topic about what goes on inside your head that keeps you from being able to accomplish those things.
So Kathy's got a great point, and this is one of the things that I'm pretty sure I talked about this week also. But she says, to paraphrase, go back and read her comment. But clarity comes with vision, right? If you don't know where you're going, then every road is a fine road to take, right? So the example I usually use is if we're on the East Coast and we're driving to the West Coast, it really doesn't matter which road I take. But as long as it's headed west, it'll get me there. The closer I get to the destination, the more granular I need to become with my directions and my choices. But if I know the destination that I'm trying to achieve, if I know that I'm going to the Computer Museum in San Jose, right, then I know the choices I need to make in order to get there.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And now that completely derailed me.
We have a really interesting comment that Carrie made that so frequently happens to us when we're going down the road toward our destination. She was distracted by the shirts in the background.
We'll show you one of those in just a minute.
And that happens to us so frequently. We're getting close to the goal, and then all of a sudden we notice that the shirts in the background need to be folded. And this is not about Carrie. This is about how easy it is for us to get distracted. It's the squirrel comment. It's really easy to let little things that have nothing to do with the destination get in our way. So that's a great comment. Thank you for making that, Carrie, because it reminds us that those things become a major issue for us, and we've got to figure out, what are we going to do? We're going to let that distract us, or we're going to keep going?
Right. So one of the things that you have to bear in mind, if you have the vision for where you're trying to go, as you are gaining clarity, use that vision as a decision filter.
Right.
Does this decision move me closer to or move me further away from where I'm trying to go?
Will that make a difference?
It will to somebody, but not to us and what we're trying to do.
Right. We didn't even see it until she pointed it out.
So Joe's got a comment here too, submitted on fine napkins.
That's what happens with our live audience.
That's something you get to do if you're here live.
Right.
Clarity also comes from experience and failure.
Right.
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 Well, clarity, yeah, I agree. It kind of comes across sometimes as an ability to predict the future, right? And that's what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. There are plenty of examples from throughout history that if you look at the example, you've got a pretty good idea of what the outcome is going to be. But then we look at that and think, nah, they were idiots. I know how to do it the right way.
I know too many people that, taking Carrie's example and what Joe just commented about, and we'll bundle those together, that would have got ready to do this show, looked in the camera,
Ooh,
and went, oh, I got to fix those shirts, and we'd have missed our trigger time, which is 9 o'clock. And some of you wait for us to go on air at 9 o'clock, and we would have missed you. We would have missed the opportunity because we got distracted by something that's right here. Now, we need to pay attention to that.
Next time.
No. We need to pay attention to the fact that those distractions, those little distractions, can keep you from missing and cause you to miss out on major opportunities. Now, that's a failure that needs to be pointed out, and that happens. I've seen how many business owners I've consulted with who got sidetracked by something, whatever it was. Something came along, some opportunity came along, some offer came along, and they chased after that thing, and they ended up failing. Now, the clarity is, don't do that again.
Right.
Failure didn't mean you were a failure.
Well, that's Joe's point, right? That's experience.
Yeah, that's what I say. That's where you get the experience from.
It can even be mindset.
Mindset, how?
It's like a glass, half empty, half full. But
Yeah.
some people forget that it can always be refilled.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. So, Joe, just in case you couldn't hear that, Joe said, the whole idea about mindset and how the glass is either half empty or half full, or you can fill it back up. Either way,
we have to do that frequently, but,
speaking of refills.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the same thing, is that I have a half full cup of coffee. We have an almost full show.
And a full shop this morning.
And a full coffee shop. So it's probably a good time for us to cut this off.
Yeah.
But the thing to keep in mind is this, that you have to develop clarity about where you're going. It's what goes on inside your head. Don't let those little things distract you from your bigger goal. Properly evaluate and assess the risk so that you can make wise decisions. I'm not talking about being careless when we talk about risk. We're talking about being wise in the decisions that we make.
Well, and that's been my topic this week, talking about opportunity and risk. Is we're not necessarily risk junkies.
Right.
We're actually pretty averse to risk. But we take smart risks.
And we see it different than other people do.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, not an obstacle.
Risk isn't a giant. It's just there.
It's just there.
It's just there, and it needs to be assessed. All right, we're going to have to go.
Okay.
We'll wrap it up.
All right.
And anything about tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Anything you need to talk about tomorrow's show?
Thursday.
Anything that's important? I have a guest tomorrow.
7 o'clock.
I have a guest tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to the guest. His name is Scott, and I'll introduce him to you early tomorrow morning. And we'll
That's
put
at 8
Scott
o'clock,
on.
right?
My show's at 9.
9.
So at 8 o'clock,
I would watch.
At 8 o'clock, I'll be telling you a little more about Scott and why I'm going to have him on the show. So, very much looking forward to that.
Okay.
And I can't wait to share Scott with my listening audience. All right, with that, we're going to go.
See you.
Thanks.